Welcome, everyone. I'm Theresa Tova, your ACTRA National Treasurer and sitting past president of ACTRA Toronto. Today, I'm so excited. We are celebrating our ACTRA National 2020 Woman of the Year, Sarah Polley. For us, it's a little bit different this year. Normally, we celebrate our Woman of the Year in person, but like everyone else in the pandemic, we are nothing but resilient. Let me introduce to you also Keith Martin Gordey, our ACTRA National Vice President, who will acknowledge the traditional Indigenous lands that we all live and gather on today. Keith?
Thanks, Tova. Although this meeting is online, we acknowledge that we live, work, meet, and travel on the traditional territories of Indigenous people that have cared for this land, now called Canada, since time immemorial. These lands are either subject to First Nation self-government under modern treaty, unceded and unsurrendered territories, or traditional territories from which First Nations, Métis, and Inuit have been displaced. To highlight the importance of this acknowledgement, I urge you to take a look at the map from the Native Land Digital website and search for the territory on which you are located. I'm speaking to you from the territories of the Coast Salish people, specifically the Musqueam Nation. We recognize that we are all treaty people and seek to work toward redressing the injustices from which we have benefited. I'll next be reading the ACTRA Equality Statement with Theresa Tova. Union solidarity is based on the principle that all union members are equal. Mutual respect, cooperation, and understanding are our goals. We embrace an open and inclusive environment and encourage respectful behavior that affirms the dignity of all individuals.
We neither condone nor tolerate behavior that undermines the dignity or self-esteem of any individual or creates an intimidating, hostile, or offensive environment.
Discriminatory speech or conduct based on gender, gender identity, sexual orientation, race, disability, age, class, language, religion, ethnic origin, membership, region or work category, or family status hurts and divides us.
Discrimination can take the form of harassment, defined as using real or perceived power to abuse, devalue, or humiliate.
Discrimination and harassment weaken our solidarity, reducing our capacity to work together on shared concerns, such as decent wages, safe working conditions, and justice for all.
ACTRA activities are to be harassment-free zones where our members' dignity and equality are respected.
ACTRA's constitution, bylaws, practices, and collective agreements reflect our commitment to equality and respect. Complaints of harassment and discrimination are taken seriously by ACTRA and should be directed to the president or their designate. All will be investigated, and those substantiated will result in action by the union.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you so much. Now, since 2010, ACTRA National has bestowed the National Woman of the Year Award each year to an ACTRA member who uses their passion to support other ACTRA members and to inspire women within the broader industry. Now, one of the happy and sometimes challenging tasks of National ACTRA Women's Committee is to deliberate, to look across the country and recommend the recipient of this very, very special award to our ACTRA National Council. So today we want to thank ACTRA's Women's Committee across the country for continuing to highlight and distinguish women who are so very important to our industry and to our union. Eleanor Noble is joining us today from Montreal. Eleanor is our amazing ACTRA National Women's Committee Chair. Eleanor, can you please tell us a little bit about this special award?
Hi, everybody. Yes, thank you, Tova, and thank you, Keith. It's an honor to be here today for this celebration. The ACTRA Woman of the Year Award shows recognition to a cisgender or transgender woman of notable acting presence who has made significant contributions to advance women within ACTRA and the recorded media industry, and has been influential in their advocacy and volunteer work within society. Our past recipients include Shirley Douglas, Tanto Cardinal, Sandy Ross, Mary Walsh, Jean Freeman, Amanda Tapping, Catherine Joel McKinnon, Tina Keeper, Rita Shelton Deverell, and Noreen Golfman. ACTRA women have for decades worked to improve work opportunities, address inequalities, and change the way women are portrayed on our screens. We have accomplished a lot, but there's way more work to be done. Our shared mandate is to explore the concerns of all female members, to raise awareness of these concerns, and to support women both within ACTRA and the entertainment industry. We are thrilled that Sarah Polley is our 2020 ACTRA National Woman of the Year. She's truly made a real difference in the way we as performers, as artists, as women in this really tough industry are treated and respected across this country. Sarah's activism inspires all of us. We are so thrilled to be able to celebrate with you, Sarah, today.
Thank you, Eleanor. So I sit on the Women's Committee with Eleanor and on the jury, and I appreciate how much thought really goes into this selection of our Woman of the Year every year. But today we're here to celebrate Sarah. Sarah Polley, not only for her successful career in this nutty business that we call show, but also to celebrate Sarah for continuing to step up on behalf of all members in this industry, all members of the union and all creative people. Sarah, she has shared with us some of her personal experiences over the years as a child star in speaking up in support of children who work in the entertainment business. Sarah's voice was instrumental to our success during bargaining, and then afterwards at conferences and workshops. She has come with us to Parliament Hill to talk to politicians on the need to increase Canadian content on our screens. And, you know, I remember being on a set when Sarah was really concerned and came up and said, "Are you going to watch this child? They're going to stay and watch because they're going to immerse a child in cold water." And then on that same set, she stood up for background performers to make sure that they were not treated as second-class citizens and would be able to get subs and get a proper meal like everyone else. Even on Twitter, where I follow you a lot, Sarah, she's there every day talking about social justice, always stepping up for those who need her, who need a voice on their behalf. So before I hand the floor over to our panel, I just want you to know that during this very challenging time, so many of our performers in the entertainment industry are struggling. And this year, we are going to honor our Woman of the Year by making a contribution to the AFC in Sarah's name. The AFC, like so many charitable organizations right now, is responding to higher than ever needs from the community, with much diminished donations. And we know that this donation will be much appreciated, and it'll allow the AFC to keep doing what they do best, just help people, especially creative artists, through these difficult times. Okay, enough about us, enough setting it up. Let's get to our panel. As I said earlier on, for those who joined me a little bit later, the questions can come to the panel. Please use the Q&A feature on the bottom of your Zoom, and we'll try to get to as many questions as we can. The chat is disabled for this Zoom. Now, co-moderating the panel today is Radheyan Simonpillai. Rad, as he likes to be called, is the culture editor at Now Magazine, film critic at CTV's Your Morning, and a pop cultural columnist on CBC Radio. Welcome, Rad, as I hand the virtual mic over to you. Have fun.
Thank you so much, Theresa. And thank you, ACTRA, for having me here today. I mean, it just means so much to me that I could be part of this celebration for Sarah Polley, because, you know, Sarah, you know, she's had such a huge impact on me, as I'm sure she's had on all of you. I mean, I remember catching her on Road to Avonlea, and, you know, as a refugee child, that's something, because she's basically the face of Canadian history to me. But, you know her resume, you know all the incredible stuff she's put on screen. And I wonder, you know, I don't think any of us can really grasp, I mean, Theresa kind of hinted at it, but I don't know that we could all grasp the extent of Sarah's role behind the scenes, you know, as an activist, as an advocate, and as an ally. And she would choke me out if I went into any real details, but I mean, let me just put it like this, like, you know, like you, I do work in media, and this can be a very difficult industry. especially for people of color, as I'm sure you've heard for the past year, right? You've heard of how voices are silenced. You saw how one guy got fired for basically calling Don Cherry a xenophobe. So navigating this industry as a person from a marginalized community, it could feel like you're on your own in a schoolyard. Like you're on your own, and there's always that group of kids, that mean group of kids that you're wary of that could pick on you, and you never feel safe or you never feel comfortable unless there's that bigger kid that could have your back. So Sarah is that bigger kid, now to me, to so many people, she is that ally that we can count on. I could just tell you, there's not too many allies like her, so I always count on Sarah to be able to, as for the years that I've known her, she's been educating me, she's been empowering me and supporting me, and she's been inspiring me. And of course, it doesn't surprise me at all that at this celebration of Sarah Polley, she decided that we're going to celebrate the people who inspire her. So let's get to them. Let's get to Sarah Polley. Get on in here and let's talk about these women we're celebrating today.
Thank you, Rad. I have to not get teary. I'm already on the edge. Thank you for all those very, very kind words. And I apologize for being the face of Canadian history to everyone. Anyway, sorry about that. First of all, I just want to say how grateful I am to ACTRA for giving me this opportunity to talk to my heroes and to hear them talk amongst themselves. It's a unique opportunity that, everyone should be so lucky to have this kind of opportunity in a lifetime, to gather the people they most admire into one room, even if it's virtual, and just to get them, ask them questions and have them share their wisdom with all of you. So this honestly does feel like the best award in the world, not just because it's being given to me, but by my union, who I have a very long history with, and I've grown with, and was in opposition to, and then collaborating with. And over the years, ACTRA's changed so much, and I think has really taken on the project of self-reflection and improvement, and constantly interrogates itself. It's not to say everything's perfect, but just I really admire the progress I've seen since I was a teenager in this organization, and the way I think it strives to protect its members. And thank you to Rad for being here. In addition to being a film critic, which I know is what he wishes he could stick to, Rad is someone who cannot help himself from asking big questions, from asking tough questions, the kinds of questions that get him and everyone around him into a lot of trouble. He is constantly opening cans of worms that are long overdue for a squirm around the earth. And I'm a huge fan. Rad was the first person to ever ask me about sexual harassment and abuse in the film industry. This was before the Me Too movement happened, and it helped me to realize internally how wrong so much of what we have had to accept has been. No one had thought to ask these questions in my 3 decades in the industry. So to me, he's a wonderful example of a listener, a questioner, and someone willing to put himself on the line, and an ally. So I wanted him here with me to help guide this conversation, because he's a lot better at this kind of thing than I am. So Rad, now what happens?
Now what happens?
We bring them on?
Yeah, we bring them on. Let's go one by one. We're going to introduce our panelists, these wonderful women. So, first up, there's Jennifer Podemski, who is an award-winning actor, director, writer, and producer. And like everyone else on this panel, she is an outspoken advocate and activist. You've seen her in Riverdale, The Res, Degrassi, Empire of Dirt, and Cardinal. She's produced shows like Moccasin Flats, Future History, and Unsettled. And just last year, Jennifer launched the Shine Network, which is a digital platform designed to amplify the voices of Indigenous women content creators. And Sarah, what do you want to add to that?
I just want to add that I've known of Jennifer since I was a kid, and I've been an avid fan of her work as an actor. And I asked her to be my very first short film, Don't Think Twice, and as well as my feature, Take This Waltz. And whenever I make a movie without Jen, it feels like something integral is missing. She's also just made amazing work through sheer grit, determination, and energy as a producer, an actor, a creator, forging new paths, and she innovates every step of the way. She's fearless. Throughout the years that I was worshiping Jen as one of my favorite actors, she was also producing hundreds of hours of original television. She is just a storyteller extraordinaire, and she knows no boundaries or limits to her creativity. She has also put countless hours into mentoring and working with Indigenous youth on top of raising her kids and exploding the world with necessary stories. So I'm just so happy to see you here, Jen. Thanks for being here.
Hey, Jen, are you there?
I'm here.
Oh, hey, how's it going? Hi.
Thank you.
All right, so up next we have Joanne Vanakola, who is an Emmy Award-winning actor, author, advocate, and screenwriter. You might have seen them in Slasher, Rookie Blue, and Being Erica. Joanne, my son would flip if he knew that I was talking to one of the voices of Beyblade.
I didn't know you did that.
Yeah, I was like, you gotta look up the resume. And Joanne is also the chair of ACTRA TO, which is the LGBTQ plus committee at ACTRA Toronto, and they are on the Sexual Assault Ad Hoc Committee for Women in Film and Television. Joanne is also the recipient of the Margaret Trudeau Advocacy Award. And Sarah, I mean, I'm sure there's so much more you got to say about Joanne.
Well, so the first time I ever saw Joanne was my mother, when I was 9 years old, sat me down to watch 9B, which was a show, actually a really great show. And my mother turned to me and said, "This is the best actor I've ever seen, and likely the best actor you will ever see." And Joanne's commitment, passion, courage, and uniqueness for me became solidified in me from a very early age as the definition of what a great actor looks like. And that hasn't really changed. And it's so funny because whenever I see an actor come into an audition room that reminds me at all of Joanne, I'm like, something in me just triggers. It's like this, this sort of weird visceral reaction. Their work over the years continues to astound me, and they're now writing and directing their own films. Joanne's book, All We Knew But Couldn't Say, which is their memoir, I read this year and it staggered me. Joanne's also devoted much of their life to activism on behalf of women and LGBTQ2+ people. Joanne's brilliance, both as an actor, writer, and activist, who has forged new territory for actors who wish not to be confined and imprisoned into binary ideas of gender, have been a constant inspiration to me and so many that have followed in their footsteps. Hi, Joanne.
Wow.
Let's just be normal now after all that.
I mean, oh my God, a lot of the good stuff, but thank you, Sarah. When do we get to speak about you?
Oh, please.
I know.
Terrifying. Okay.
All right.
Thank you for that lovely intro, and it's awesome to be here with you all, amazing people.
Thank you, Joanne. All right, so let's turn it over to Jackie Richardson, who is an award-winning actress and one of Canada's foremost singers of gospel, blues, and jazz. She's been performing in concert, radio, television, and you name it. And I actually remember watching her as a child on TNT opposite Mr. T. I love it. So like that was got my heart. And get this, she also sang with Ray Charles, and she's acted opposite Sidney Poitier. So okay, I'm dead. Sarah, how did you meet Jackie?
So I met Jackie on the set of Hey Lady, and I felt like I just stumbled across a cavern of gold. I mean, I really think Jackie is one of the best actors I've ever seen in my life. And I feel like not enough people know that because she's such an amazing, legendary singer that it gets very distracting. Hi, there you are. We loved looking at your stove, but it's even better looking at you, Jackie. I actually feel like I was sort of hoping you'd just speak over the image of your stove. That would have been amazing. Anyway, I gotta keep talking about you now. You're not a stove. She's hilarious, playful, wise, more agile than any actor I've ever worked with. And although she's already played amazing parts and had this incredible career as a singer and an actor, my personal dream in the next decades is that people have the sense to write parts for Jackie as beautiful as the songs she sings. I highly, highly recommend that you treat yourself after watching this panel to watching Jackie's rendition of Both Sides Now online. It will make the world come together for just a moment.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you for having me here with all you wonderful people. And yeah, that's my stove.
Thanks.
Thank you for being here, Jackie.
Thank you, Red.
All right, so our final panelist is Nicole Stamp, who is a TV host, actor, director, writer, and activist. And she starred in kids' televisions, video games, and you name it. And she's taught at U of T and Sheridan, and the list goes on. Like, her resume is really actually just a mouthful because the hustle is real. But my favorite thing here is she's the co-founder of Bias Box, which is, by the way, spelled like by us, like for us, by us. And that's a very incredible initiative that produces educational toolkits to raise anti-racist and inclusive children. So like incredible. And I think I actually met Nicole on the same day as you, Sarah.
Yeah, we did, didn't we? I did actually really put that together. It was the same panel. Yeah.
No,
So fun. Yeah. Yeah,
that was my way of throwing it to you, by the way.
Oh, you are. That was it was just such an elegant throw.
Yeah, that was a throw. I'm sorry. I was trying to be coy. Sorry.
I know you were, and it's just not my thing. I need,
this is why you guys do the acting.
So I met Nicole, after this panel that I saw with Rad, actually, where I watched her moderate the best discussion I saw in the Me Too movement. And I then went away and I just found everything I could on this magnificent supernova of a brain. She's a director, a writer, an actor, an activist, and she's equally brilliant at all these things. It's actually pretty annoying. She's written the most helpful kind of how-to guides I've ever read for people wanting to learn about how to be productive in the world in light of the Me Too movement and Black Lives Matter. Among her 800 projects at the moment, she is the co-creator of the Bias Box, as Rad mentioned, which is an incredibly effective educational toolkit to dismantle bias. I highly recommend you order it for yourself or your kids. I also think of her as the most generous public intellectual that I've come across. She's willing to engage in any discussion with anybody and engage in absolutely zero bullshit while doing so. She focuses much of her work on concrete solutions to equity problems. And she's able to harness this power, this conviction, and this thoughtfulness into her work as an artist, as a truly brilliant actor, director, writer. Hi, Nicole, nice to see you.
Hi, oh my God, thank you. I'm not a very emotional person, but I feel like I'm prickling in the eyes. Thank you so much for saying that. I'm super happy to be here. This is a really fantastic panel. Thanks for having me.
This is so exciting. And I'm just so excited to get to now pepper you all with questions, and also just feel free to talk to each other and ask each other questions as well. And Rad, you'll be good at jumping in because I get so absorbed.
Look, this panel, we're going to call it Women Talking, like your film, your upcoming film. So you're all going to do the talking. I'm going to be your arm candy for now. Let's see where this goes. I don't know, Sarah, do you want to throw the first question at them?
Yeah, so I wanted to start, all my questions are kind of big picture questions, and I'm just so curious to see where the conversation goes. The first thing that occurred to me that I'd love to hear you guys talk about is, if you can think of a moment in your life as an artist that felt really pivotal, a turning point or an epiphany or a fork in the road that strikes you in retrospect as really important. Should we start with Jennifer? Because she looks most nervous.
I saw it. The mute was off.
I'm not good at this.
And my answer cannot involve you.
Your answer cannot involve you. I appreciate it.
That is such an enormous question. I think I have had so many of those moments, right? I really feel truly as part of being an artist is the ability to continuously and forever be inspired by things that seem uninspiring to everybody else. And I think that I was aware of that at a really young age. I think for me, the most pivotal thing, the first most pivotal artistic thing that happened to me was I saw a play called Pal Joey somewhere downtown Toronto when I was in maybe grade 3. And it was the daughter of my grandmother's friend who was starring in the show. And I realized in that moment that I had to sing and dance and be on stage. Like, it was the moment that I realized that you could actually, people did this. I couldn't tell what was happening on TV. I didn't know that was a job. I just thought they were in the TV. But for theater, that was when I realized that you could actually love to sing and dance and perform and make people laugh and make people dance, and also like do it as a job.
Mm.
So that was really where my career began, that moment.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Jackie?
Well, for me, I agree that there's been with Jennifer, there's been a lot of turning points that struck out to me when I started thinking about it. When this panel came up, and I thought a lot of them have been where there's been so many people that have been supportive of me and mentored me in such a strong way that I wanted to be a Motown baby. That was my goal. If I could be a Motown baby for my life, that was to be fine. And then so in that era, then I met people that said, okay, all right, so you're singing that, why don't you try singing this? One of those people was Salome Bay, who said to me, Jackie, there's something in your voice that lends itself to the blues, and why don't you try singing the blues? And I said, okay. And then she would say, learn a blues song yet? I said, no. Okay. So then one day she just put this play down and said, I wrote a play that I want to direct, and I want you to do the part. And it was Madame Gertrude, about Ma Rainey. And before that, I was doing my Motown and doing I was with community theater and doing like the musicals like that. Never thought of that. And it was a big changing point for me to move in that direction.
Great.
Joanne, do you have a story?
Yeah, like everyone, there are numerous stories. I, was a child actor as well, way back. I mean, I think my first gig was Sesame Street when I was 8. And I didn't finish high school. I think like Sarah as well, I was already immersed in the film industry as a teen. But I think the biggest things that happened to me were internal, that were eventually externalized after playing, before playing a lesbian on screen. But I think because I've always been butch, or what I would call non-binary today in today's language that didn't exist then, I didn't fit into the industry, and I kept trying to fit. I kept trying to audition for these parts that I would never get cast for because, it wouldn't happen. They wanted young, feminine, white girls, cisgendered and hetero and all of those, everything I wasn't, and I was always so uncomfortable. And I think the moment that it really solidified that I had to do something bigger beyond my own life and journey was I went to Hollywood after winning an Emmy, and I was very young. And I was basically asked to be closeted and to not, express my gender and to look a certain way every time I went to an audition. And I kind of had a meltdown, but it was the actual meltdown that broke me open in a way that I don't think wouldn't have happened had I not taken that journey. And I went to San Francisco. I was looking at the quilts of, people who had been dying of AIDS at that time. I was very young, and I was overcome with grief that I didn't know how to express because I didn't have the language then or the confidence to speak the words that I understood inside my being about what was happening to me, because the industry was trying to snuff me out or make me quit. And I wouldn't allow them to snuff me out or force me to quit. And I'm still here decades later doing the same thing. So I feel like it's an exhausting journey, but it also was the most important with respect to my activism and how I try to live in the world and step up in a way that encourages others to be themselves as well. So it's not a Pollyanna thing. It's just, I have to do it in order to survive, because the two, I can't exist inside myself and in this culture without my advocacy and activism. It's just how I live. Otherwise, I don't think I would have survived. And that's a long answer to something.
An amazing answer. Thank you.
Nicole, I saw you nodding too, so you got your story ready.
No, I really appreciate you sharing that story, Joanne. Thank you. For me, I feel like I was raised to be as sort of protocol obsessed as possible. So to be very polite, to speak in a certain way, to keep, you know, your private life very private, be very cagey about my opinions in public. And I always had a really strong like drive for fairness. But then I worked in kids TV for a long time, and it was very much an environment where, you know, it wasn't considered appropriate to go outside the brand of the show. So everything that I said in my like personal life, if it was ever anywhere public, like in social media or anything like that, was like, it was very much managed in terms of like, you know, you're representing this brand. So you have to like, you know, ask permission to get a haircut. Don't sign any political petitions. Don't be seen or photographed at a protest. So like, those were like explicit rules that I signed a contract to. And so that felt very nerve-wracking, that anything I wanted to do, like even if I did like a comedy show, the idea that I might make a joke about the current political regime was like off limits. So I sort of really learned how to like stifle my personal beliefs, which were very strong, but just never express them in any kind of public venue. And then social media kind of like came up, and it became like you had a bit more leeway to start saying things, and people were saying things, and you could see that there was like, you could find support for things in a way that you never could before, because, you know, maybe you wrote something in a newspaper, and if you could get it published, you don't know who read it or what they thought, right? Like you couldn't hear the agreement. So when social media came along and you'd say some little thing and people would like it or agree with it or engage with it, it sort of seemed to me that like, I started to see that more people had the same kind of ideas that I had, and like they didn't feel as stifled as I did. And then when Me Too happened, I remember like seeing people write Me Too, Me Too, Me Too. And a lot of my Me Too experiences happened when I worked in kids TV. And so I like, you know, my heart leapt into my throat and I typed Me Too, and then kind of panicked and like ran away from my computer for a while. And then I came back and all these men were like, I can't believe the number of people that have said Me Too. Like, I'm horrified to know that, you know, my kindergarten teacher said Me Too, my girlfriend said Me Too. And like, what do? I didn't know it was this bad. And I felt so frustrated that like people like wouldn't know it was so bad. It's like, I feel kind of frustrated when people like discover racism, where you're like, people have been talking about this for a long time. Like, were you not paying attention? And this, you know, some dude I know who's like a pretty decent dude was like, I wish I knew how to help. Like, what could I do to help? And I was like, oh, I know what you could do to help. So I wrote a little list of like 6 things that men could do to improve the climate for people around them. And then I kind of panicked a little bit. I put it on Facebook, press send, and then I like went and bought groceries. And I came back like an hour later and it had been shared like 80 times. And all these people were writing on it. And over the course of the next week or so, I kept adding to the list and engaging with people in the comments. And it was the first time that I ever like took a stand in public. And it was so scary and so like, but it was also so energizing. And I felt like I was like on fire that week. Like I was just like, I wanted to respond to every question. I wanted to make sure what I was saying was like perfectly clear. I wanted to like not leave any gaps that somebody could like pick their way through. And like everything everybody said, I wanted to like be super clear with what I was trying to say. And I really felt like I like put myself out there that week, that month, which led to that article getting picked up and republished. And it was kind of like, it kind of became a big deal. Like there were 8,000 comments on my Facebook post. And I either liked the ones that I agreed with, or I like responded to every single one of them. And ultimately, like a lot of people have read that post, like it went around. And it was kind of like the first time that anything like that had happened. And there were a lot of like positive repercussions, even though it was very stressful. I got rape threats, I got death threats. Like people were like in my DMs, like just all over the place. But it ended up being really positive, and it was like a net positive experience and not a scary experience. And I sort of was like, well, like, obviously we have to talk about this. Like it's something like these injustices affect so many people. Someone has to say something. And I think for me, it really took social media, like asking the question, like, what should we do about this, for me to be like, oh, I think I know the answer. And then having in real time people respond to it made me realize, I felt so emboldened by the fact that there were so many people who agreed. So that was a real turning point for me, because I kind of realized like, I'm not really interested in being aligned with any, like, I don't think I'll ever do a project again where they're like, okay, well, no activism, no opinions, like you're a face on our channel and you're not don't sign a petition, don't whatever. I think I want to be able to speak, and I'm more interested in that than I am in towing the party line and getting a paycheck for it. And I have to say, like, Sarah, you know, you're somebody who, like, I used to see your face on the cover of TV Guide when I was a kid. And I remember reading that, like, during the Gulf War, you showed up at an awards ceremony wearing a peace sign as a 12-year-old to protest the Gulf War. And like, you were on a Disney show and you did that. And I remember all the time I worked in kids TV, I was like, Sarah Polley wore a peace sign and like pissed off Disney, like the motherland of like entertainment companies. And I was like, I'm never going to be that brave. Like, there's no way I will ever do that. And I've literally like held you up as an example of putting your career on the line to stand up for something you believe in at 12. So thank you. many years later, inspiring me to finally do something.
I appreciate that. It really helped that I hated my career at that point in my life, and I didn't care if I destroyed it. It's a really powerful position to come from, and really not want to be in the film industry. But what's interesting to me, if I can just jump in, is Nicole, when I first saw you on that panel, was really close to after you had that, like, CNN,
yeah, that was like 2 weeks later.
Okay, so for me, when I saw you, you were so comfortable in your skin as this incredibly vocal, articulate activist that I assumed you'd been doing it for decades. Like, I can't believe that was 2 weeks in. That's just
brand new. Yeah, losing it. I was so nervous.
Oh God. Wow.
You talk about the changes within the system, and when social media wasn't a big thing for us, it wasn't available, and starting off trying to go out for roles, and it took a long time for somebody in the theater to recognize the issue of racism, and that there was a whole lot of Black actors who weren't able to work because most of the roles were traditional. So it wasn't until we did Young People's Theater and co-pro with Canadian Stage said, we've got to give these people work. And so they started the non-traditional acting. And we auditioned for that. So here we are doing Three Penny Opera, and Salome Bay was married to James McDonald, and Marianne McDonald was the daughter, and it was all through the cast. It was wonderful, and the audience accepted it, which was really, really a blessing to see, because that was a big one. We would go for auditions sometimes, and there'd be the whole Black community, and there might be 2 things that we can audition for the year, and that was our reunion. So it's the work that's been done throughout ACTRA over the years. It's just I see a lot of changes, and for the better. God bless you all, I tell you, because yeah.
Yeah, I just want to say that I can sort of relate to that on a different level. Like, certainly, and Sarah might even as well, and even Jen, that there wasn't any social media back in the day. And I think if you're not cisgendered, heterosexual, and white in the industry, it's you understand what those barriers are, what the oppression is, and what it is to be on the outside. And I think it's taken decades with our union and even with each other to kind of just bridge some of those gaps. And even then, I know we still have a really long way to go. But what I think is really great about this is that this is a group of people who are not afraid to speak out and trying to forge a path for other people. And I just think this is awesome. And then for Sarah, like I think, I was working with Sarah's mom before I knew Sarah, when I was a little kid, and on shows like Street Legal and Night Heat, and just old shows back in old Canadiana shows as a kid, and looking up to them and wondering, how do I grow up to be that? And I didn't know what that was at the time. And when I crossed paths with Sarah, it was also during the anti-racist action days, which I think were in the 90s, if I'm not mistaken. And Sarah, just, I'm just going to speak for a second, just because I knew a little kid who had scoliosis, and, I remember Sarah being completely open to speaking with this child and being a mentor and a soft spot. And just, I'm just only a few years older than Sarah, not by much, but I think like being able to watch a young Sarah be so vocal and outspoken and such a good mentor to other young people was very inspiring as well as a comrade or peer. And I just want to say that you've done amazing work over the years, and I just want to say that without giving too much attention to it.
I really appreciate
know you don't like that. But I do think that the women on this panel are phenomenal, and I hope that we find a way to forge a path somehow collectively and keep doing what we do in the world. Because whether we're Black or Indigenous or queer, non-binary, transgender, whatever it is that we're dealing with, I think that collectively, if we can come together and make change in the industry, as well as individuals, for our own community, then we'll push things forward that much quicker. So let's get on it someday, people.
I feel like it kind of leads me into another question I had, which was, I'm just curious to hear people talk. And Joanne, you talked a little bit about this, and I think Nicole, you touched on it too, and actually Jackie, you did too. But I think I'm curious to hear more about the challenges you faced in the industry and how the industry could change further so that others don't have to face these challenges. Like we've obviously seen in our careers a lot of movement, but what are the next steps, and what other movements would you like to see happen so that other people behind you are not challenged the same way you were? Jennifer, do you want to start?
So I will continue from, recognizing that I love to sing and dance, and you can make a career at it or do it for life. And, did it for a long time in elementary school, and as I went into performing arts in my high school experience. And it really wasn't until I decided to officially become a professional performer that I realized that the world wasn't ready for someone who looked like me to be a professional performer, because I just didn't fit any mold that people were. It was really shocking to me. I knew what shame was. I knew what being alienated was. I knew, that I had a lot of identity issues, and I had my own personal experiences around the intersections of my own heritage and background, and growing up in Toronto and being Jewish and Native and just being all confused. And really ultimately being ashamed of what I look like, because I didn't look like anybody. So when I really professionally went into the business, that was sort of immediately when I was 17, I realized that there was no place for me. There were very few places for me. So when I did start to work, I was very aware. I felt like I was an interloper. And I had that feeling for a very long time, many, many years, that I was sort of stepping into someone else's territory and kind of like listening and watching. And so 9B, for example, was one of the first gigs that I got as a background performer. And I was like a recurring classroom background performer. And that's when I saw Joe for the first time, and Michelle St. John, who was an Indigenous Native woman who, I had seen on TV already. Like I knew that it was possible. But being on that show, watching all the performers and how everyone looked different on that show. It was so far ahead of its time, that show.
Mm-hmm.
And it was such a privilege to be on that set, because I constantly went back to that when I would, go into the industry and realize like every single project that I was doing, I was just like the Native girl with the one or two lines, or, the prostitute, or the victim, or the girl that gets murdered. Like these stereotypes were very real, and I was experiencing them as a young woman. Anyways, I guess I just until recently have felt like an interloper in this industry. And there have been moments in my career that I have felt like I've made some progress in terms of lending a voice to others coming up in the industry, Indigenous women specifically, and making opportunities, creating opportunities for Indigenous youth who, might not know that there's possibilities in this industry. But ultimately, I feel like the world is only about to open up for us. And that a lot of that is, many of you have spoken about, politics and policy. And I think that in many ways, the policies, the structural reality in Canada for Indigenous people is reflected in the television and media we consume. And so the absence and erasure of our stories and existence of, all the Indigenous realities across this, in this country, are absent, as they are, designed to be absent, because then people would wonder through the storytelling, what is up? Wait a second, this is not right. What is up? So when we start to take back our autonomy in writing and directing and producing and telling our own stories and changing the narrative and building the narrative, creating the narrative, it starts to reflect a different story. So in answer to your question, I think I feel like I'm just getting started. I really do.
Thanks. Amazing.
You know, can I just jump in here for a second? You know, the speaking up, when you all talk about speaking up, Nicole was talking about how, you know, maybe it's easier with the social media generation. I'm just wondering, is it like, how much easier are we finding it for you all? And how do you feel supported when you do speak up? Because, you know, like I get the feeling that like everyone appreciates you, everyone retweets you and stuff for speaking out, and then others can benefit, but you might be the one. You're going to be worried that you're the one that ends up being punished for it, right? Like, okay, like we hear you, we're going to take your message, and it'll benefit others. But how do you overcome the fear that you're the one that's going to suffer for that?
I think that's a really legitimate concern that a lot of people have, and I think like there's mixed messaging and unclear like best practices around what you should do to help boost a group that you don't personally belong to. So I know I tweeted something like a while ago that was like, talked about, you know, what I perceive to be a problem with the way policing works in our like society. And somebody retweeted it and tagged the Toronto police. Oof. And I was like, are you trying to get me killed? Like, what are you doing? Why would you do that? What do you think happens to Black activists who speak out publicly? So to me, that was like, you know, she's a white woman. She's in a position where she could say something and utilize her own safety. And, you know, you could frame that as she's choosing to amplify a Black voice, I guess, or she's choosing to be quiet and amplify somebody. Personally, I framed it as she's using me as a hammer, and protecting herself from a position of privilege and putting somebody who's in a lower position of privilege in front of her like a battering ram. So I was like, you know, I don't think that's an appropriate way to engage with that topic. Like, I think it's really important to be very aware of like how intersectionality and positionality affect each of us. So the areas in which you have privilege and the areas in which maybe somebody else doesn't, and like thinking about whether you're quoting them or you're sharing their work. Because I definitely feel like sometimes I'll say something and people are like, can I share this? And I'm like, can you write your own version of it and share that, where it's like coming from your words instead of like putting me out there to get trolled. Because I feel like, you know, there's positions where you can like publicize someone's work and then they're in a position where they're super unsafe as a result of that public. There's a few people that have like worked in activist spaces in Toronto who have become the faces of certain activist movements, and they've gotten horribly doxxed, and their safety is really, you know, in danger because they were put into these positions. And it's like, you know, is the best way for me to engage with this topic by pushing somebody out in front of me and being like, see what they said? I don't think it is. At the same time, I don't want to speak over somebody, you know, to pretend that I know what their rights should be better than they do. But I think it's like an interesting balancing act. And it's something I've been thinking about, maybe writing about. I haven't quite figured out myself, like what you should do or how you should make that calculus. But I think it's something really important to think about. So at the same time, like in our industry, I almost feel like we're kind of like a generation behind, where I look at a show like Kim's Convenience, which I totally love. And I recognize that story. And I feel like, you know, growing up, one of my best friends was a Korean person whose parents owned a convenience store. So like, I'm very familiar with that world. I still think it's interesting that like the two lead actors on that show, Jane and Paul, are basically doing impressions of their own parents who are a full generation older than the Kim's Convenience parents, right? Like Jane and Paul were both born in Canada and they both speak English with flawless Canadian accents. So it's interesting that like they're being put in a position to play almost like a historical character, like they're almost playing a generation ago. And then for me, I feel like, you know, a lot of the shows that I could be cast in are historical shows about like Black communities, but I would not belong in those communities because I'm visibly mixed race. So it's kind of an interesting thing where it's like, if we keep telling like in-group stories, then there's only space for certain people to exist in those groups if we're like drawing on history. So if we're telling a story about like Canada in the 1600s, again, I don't belong there. Like, you know, no like non-male person with short hair belongs there, right? Because it's like, well, this is who's in that world, and it's very prescribed. So to me, it's like part of what I think is important to move the industry forward is to like privilege smaller stories, future stories, current stories, as opposed to stories that like throw back into the past. So, you know, like, I find I play a lot. I'm like cast in a bunch of web series, and I've been cast in space a few times because it's like people like me belong in the future. Like we don't really fit into the past anywhere. So in a way, like I think one way to change our industry and keep moving it forward is to do more small productions. So I find that when I'm on TV, there's nowhere to put me where I've never had a mom on TV before. I've never had a lover on TV before. If I'm on TV, I'm playing somebody's secretary of varying levels of competence. Either I'm like a mousy, incompetent secretary, I'm a very competent, sassy secretary. And it's like, they want me in the show because they want someone who looks like me, but they don't have a context to put me in. They're like, what's she? Like, does she have a mom? Does she have a partner? I doubt it, you know? But in web series, I've had lovers, I've had families, I've had like all these different, you know, in a web series world in the future, it's like they can see me as like the lead of a story. But on TV, I have to be a side character. So I kind of feel like you want more young, new creators who bring like a fresh perspective and a younger perspective. And like they've grown up in more diverse environments and they have queer friends and they have like mixed race friends, so that they're thinking in the future instead of thinking like a generation behind us. I feel like that is a good way to move forward and to be able to then find those shows and boost them so that something new is being made as opposed to something that keeps looking back at the past. Like I will literally never be cast in a show that has a horse. Like if there's horses, they don't need me. You know what I mean? But Canadian TV has so many horses.
Which is why I apologized at the beginning for being the face of Canadian history. Because it is exactly what my career was built on, are these completely homogenous shows that have whitewashed the whole history of Canada. You're welcome.
Joanna, what do you got to say? Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to add that that's very funny, by the way, because in fact, when I was a teenager and you were doing those shows, Sarah, I think I auditioned for something and I was like basically a boy teenager, auditioning for a girl teenager. But in my own life, I felt like a boy, you know, and I was like, I'm never going to get cast in this. This is ridiculous. But to answer your question, Sarah, I do feel like, and it ties into what Nicole is saying, is that, you know, we still haven't moved forward very quickly. So when you see the lesbian, you see the lipstick lesbian and they're very sexy and they're like, you know, sexy to men who are watching. And, you know, women still have to look a certain way and you still play the prostitute and the girlfriend and the wife and all of those things that, you know, straight women play on TV. And I think we're slowly advancing and that is changing definitely, but it's still very, very slow. And I think it's slow across the board with respect to race, expression of gender, sexuality, and ability. And I think that we do have to create our own content because the people at the top of the power structure in our industry are still stuck in the old ways of thinking about what works on TV and what works in film. And let's get that so-and-so filmmaker who's been doing it for 40 years to do the next one. And it's just, it's so insular and closed that it really, it does keep us outside. And we have to smash those barriers by doing precisely that, by creating our own content and lifting others up with us as we go, because we can't be in our own boxes as independent artists and expect things to change culturally unless we're invested in each other and in our communities. So I think that that's what we have to do moving forward as well. And if we do historical things, then let's be a little bit more accurate. They weren't homogenous, they weren't just white cisgender. So what was going on during the 1600s or the 1700s that were not casting Black people or queer people or trans people or Indigenous people? So what was going on? And if we're going to use that time, then let's be authentic about it. Yeah. Let's get forward too. Let's forget that.
I actually have a pretty like visceral memory. I think this is when I became kind of angry, actually, angry enough that I didn't care about wearing a peace sign and pissing off Disney or didn't want to be an actor generally, was when they auditioned for Avonlea. They actually came to my school, which was an art school, which actually Jen went to before me as well. And they did auditions for the other parts. And I had not realized, like in my little bubble, that all the kids lined up outside the library at a performing arts school where everybody wanted to be in a TV show, they were all white. And so like one of my best friends, Alex, I found like in the locker room sobbing, because she was not invited to be part of this huge opportunity that had come to the school. And it was just in that moment where the dissonance of that like we were all, it was a pretty diverse school, but when it came to those opportunities, we were immediately separated. It was a really, that for me was a pivotal kind of turning point for me, where I just felt like this whole thing is broken. This whole thing's broken.
To me, what we've been going through for this past couple of years, and especially this year with the pandemic, it's like, it feels like it's the perfect storm and all the isms are being challenged at one time. We have to deal with, it seems we're going to deal with all of them at one time. And so when you talk about it, everything going slow, I think that this is like where we're faced with all of this, and it's a matter of the challenges we got to deal with every single one of them, because every single one of them are so important, and it can't be overlooked anymore. It's been here too long. You know, all these things that we're talking about. So when all of this happened around the pandemic and everybody's sitting home, I'm thinking, okay, why now? Why are we at this particular time facing all these things at once? You know, there was a stop put there and take a look by you know, by the universe. To me, it just all has to be dealt with. And yeah, I don't know if I should say this, but one of the things that for a long time for me, I get asked to do sing the anthem a lot. And it has always bothered me. And when they said that there was going to be a change in the lyric, they were talking about the gender, but I was wondering, what is that change going to be? And so one of these things that we have to deal with as far as recognizing who we are and where we are. The thing with the national anthem, to me, every time I sing and I say, this is wrong. I said, "Oh Canada, our home and native land." If we want to deal properly with it, it should be, "Oh Canada, our home on native land," because we are all visitors to their land. And then we can really talk about truth and reconciliation. But until everybody recognizes that and says, yes, it's not ours, and it's, you know, we're here out of generosity that we're able to share, but let's recognize. It just bothers me. It just bothers me.
Yeah, I think there's something about, you know, and while I think land recognitions are really important, I think that you know, where does the action begin after the talk? And I think that's the big part of the problem is the lack of real reconciliation, as much as there's political talk and maybe some desire or will, but it doesn't seem like the action follows, whether it's anti-Black racism action, or whether it's action around the land and Indigenous right to sovereignty, or, you know, what's happened with respect to colonialism and near genocides. Like, we don't really have those conversations. And I think those are the conversations that are even missing in our storytelling, which goes back to, if we're going to talk about the stories from the 16 and 1700s, then really let's talk about them. And let's get honest about what those stories are. And if we do that, I feel like we're going to open the floodgates for so many of us, for so many issues. And what Jackie, what you're saying around this time, around COVID and Me Too and Black Lives Matter and illness and you know, the pipelines and all those things, is that we've made this mess as a species, I think, like, and we haven't figured out how to get out of it. And we know better. I think we all actually know better. It's just the political will and the action hasn't followed what we know.
Yeah, I feel like, you know, especially post like George Floyd's murder, I wrote a lot of stuff on social media, and a lot of people would private message me and be like, Nicole, how do I say this? I'm gonna write a casting call or a statement for my small business. Like, what do I say? What do I say? And I feel like those questions really split into two kinds of questions. There were some people who really wanted to make sure they looked good on Instagram, and they were very concerned with protecting their reputations and seeming to say the right thing, and they wanted to use the right wording. And what was behind that was, frankly, empty vanity, right? Like, they wanted to make sure that they didn't look like they were a bad person, but they weren't necessarily planning to make any action to back that up. And I feel like, Sarah, you know, like, one of the things that I really appreciated about you, it's like not that long after we got to know each other, I feel like you and I have had a lot of equity conversations, and I feel like when I talk to you about this stuff, if I like, we have a conversation about some equity issue that's come up, and I feel like, you know, you're in a position with different projects in your pipeline where you can make decisions that affect other people. You can choose who you're going to bring on board your projects. You can choose what slant your projects will take. You can choose what kind of characters show up in your adaptations. And I feel like having those conversations with you has always felt like a real force multiplier, because I feel like if we talk through some equity issue, I feel like you're going to pop out a script in 2 months that like puts that issue forward. You're going to make hiring decisions on your next project. They're going to put that equity idea into action. And I feel like it's been so satisfying to have all of these like conversations with you, because, you know, there's been a few moments when you've asked for my advice, which is like already a great honor, like quite flattering. But then I feel like that advice is never because you want to look good on Twitter and say the right thing on Twitter. It's because you want to be sure that you're approaching the way you're going to think about this equity topic and the way you're going to put it into practice in a real way. And I see, you know, actual outcomes. Like, I know that the next few decisions that you make will not only be like influenced by that, but will put it into practice. Because to me, I feel like, you know, a lot of times people are kind of, because we live in such a social media inspired world, people are very aware of their superficial affect. Like, they really are aware of how people are seeing them and whether they seem to be like politically correct. And I think like we've almost come to this place where a lot of people are framing anti-racism or equity as like a self-improvement project. Like, I want to be seen as a good person, so I'm going to make sure that I use the word BIPOC a lot. And there's no actual commitment to action behind it. And with you, I don't feel like it's that at all. I feel like you're like, okay, I want to take action and make sure I'm doing it equitably. Like, is this the right way to go? Cool, great, here I go. And I feel like if your anti-racism and your equity work is not being translated through action that moves money, power, safety, credibility into the hands of people from whom those things were traditionally, you know, held back from, if you're not changing how power is allocated, then what you're doing is a self-improvement project, and it's just vanity. And with you, I never feel like it's vanity driven. I always feel like you're like, okay, I want to make my next move. Is this the right kind of move? Great. And it's so deeply satisfying to have these conversations with you, because I see you put it into action again and again. And then you don't even come back looking for cookies that you did it. You just do it and keep going. It's remarkable.
I appreciate that more than anything ever. So thank you very, very much. And it reminds me of some advice that Nicole gave me recently, which I think is worth sharing, which is, I was getting really nervous on Twitter, and I felt like a few people were sort of taking issue with what I was saying or the wording of what I was saying. And I called Nicole about it. And I had this amazing talk with Nicole where she was like, you understand, like, your context of just tweeting out as yourself is not everybody else's context. Like, for you, for a lot of people, like, what you represent is someone who's been incredibly privileged. You know, you were white, you were on a TV show that was this like iconic Canadian TV show. You come with enormous amounts of privilege. Just so you know, they might, you know, the people who are commenting this, they don't know all the like hard things that have happened to you, because you have had enormous privilege, and I have. And so when you tweet, there's an expectation that you'll take that responsibility seriously, and that you will use that platform to sort of, you know, move attention. And I just found that really interesting, because we're all just out there with our social media profiles. You know, I was like tweeting 10 times a day, like, oh, this is funny and this is interesting. And that if you are in a position of privilege, just that message I got from Nicole was, you need to be very thoughtful, actually, about everything you put out there. And that is not to say fearful, but to be thoughtful about what that's doing. And I don't think that's something I would have come to it on my own, because I don't think of myself that way. But that's the reality of it. The reality of it is that was, you know, the position I was in. And I so appreciated that advice. I want to share that, because I feel like it's a good thing for us all to sort of take in.
But isn't that second guessing also then what prevents us from speaking out sometimes? Like that kind of filter and stuff? Like, I mean, I don't know, Nicole, do you find that you can self-censor when you're about to speak out, or what is that?
Yeah, I do self-censor, but I also think, you know, I don't think censoring gets a bad rap. People are always like mad about censorship. Censorship is fine. We all choose our words, right? Like, I'm choosing the words I'm using to speak right now. So why not just choose the words that will get your message across with the least amount of bullshit, right? So it's like, you know, when something happens on social media, there's this immense pressure to be the first one to respond to, like, to react to it. But I feel like it's also okay to stop, take a step back and say, okay, if I say this, what are the implications? If I say that, what are the implications? I don't think we can choose our words to the point of choosing no words. I think silence is absolutely the wrong tactic. But I think it's okay to stop and regroup and think about positionality and think about who else is implicated or who's involved in this topic. And then rather than like reacting, you could like respond. And I do feel like, Sarah, obviously for you, like that's a particular thing because you are like a very high profile level. But I think for any actor, like people, when they see you on TV, they feel like they know you. And when you have a public position, and if you're, like you're in a position of like potential fame, either now or maybe later in your career. So being careful about your words, you should absolutely always say the thing. Like if you see something unjust, you should say something, but you can think about how you say it and you can choose the words that will get your message across without harming anybody else. So I feel like censoring is like, I don't think censorship exists in our culture. People are always upset about being censored. Censorship means the government like puts you in jail because you critiqued it. Like censorship doesn't mean someone got mad at you on Twitter because you said something stupid. So like, there's going to be response. Like we now live in a democratic platform where like, if I say something on Twitter, you can say something back. And that's not a bad thing, even if it hurts my feelings. That's a good thing. I just think like, you always are choosing your words anyway. Just choose the words that get across what you actually mean and then say those.
Mm-hmm. I have a question, another sort of big picture question, if that's okay, Rad. Am I allowed to ask another big picture question? Okay.
No.
My big picture question is,
Let me get a big picture.
Is if you could talk about, do you feel like, you have a mission in a way as an artist and as a person in the world? If you had to frame it as a mission or a purpose, what would it be? And also, how has that changed for you over the years?
I'm waiting to see if anyone wants to jump on. Oh, Joanne's ready. Cool.
Yeah, I think about this all the time. I think I do have a mission. I think I had a mission since I was a teenager. That's when I started to write in my journal. And, I was already living alone on my own in the world. So it didn't, that's where I found solace was in my writing. And it did change because the more I grew into myself as someone who's non-binary, and I would say closer to transmasculine in some way, even though I'm not sort of, feminine, and I'm certainly, more that end than I am anything. But I think growing up in the culture, I've had to unlearn so many things. And so, while my focus was youth and youth rights and anti-violence issues and child abuse issues, I had a nonprofit for a few years that focused on that work. But I think as I grow older, I feel like I'm really invested in young people and girls and queer youth and, people from diverse intersectional, I would say, spaces. And that is the mission. I feel like the mission has always been the same. It just morphs as I get older. And I just really am invested in seeing queer people and young people and intersectional people find a space in our industry. And I won't stop, I don't think, this advocacy, because again, it's like breath for me. If I don't do it, then I'm not sure why I'm on the planet. So I feel like I'll keep doing that until I can't do it anymore, because that's my purpose. I just feel like it's my purpose. Regardless of what's happening in my acting career or my writing career or anything personal, like that is why I'm here. So that sounds so grand, but it's really real. Like that's my mission. And I hope it changes and evolves and becomes bigger and better as I continue to age. But in some ways, I feel like I'm just getting going too. So it's a new chapter, right? So.
Mhm.
Jennifer, I know you were going to say something too. Yeah.
I think, looking back at your life is so important to remember sort of where your mission began. And I think that for me, being a bridge builder was always like what I did at school. It was how I like came out of my discomfort about how uncomfortable I felt about myself. And I just wanted to bring people together. That was kind of the thing. It was my way of feeling a part of things. And as I got older, I realized that I did that with my work. I wanted so badly people to understand Indigenous people. I just wanted that so badly. And I didn't really know how to do it as a child or as a young adult until I started to really actively work in the industry as a storyteller and a content creator. But I think my mission, and probably why I was made by a Jewish guy from a Holocaust survivor parent and an Indigenous woman from residential school survivor parents and grandparents, was specifically because by design, by creator, for me to do work that brings people together and bridges divides between cultures and people, and, you know, builds understanding and builds community. Those kinds of things that I feel like, you know, whether they're, you call it advocacy or, you know, being political, I feel like for me, it's work of human beings. You know, whether I'm an actor or a writer, dancer, singer, coffee person, like whatever I'm doing, I feel like that's going to be my mission. And I'm happy at like 48 years old to look back and say, oh, it wasn't that I just figured it out in the last 10 years. It was always there. I just wasn't really listening. I was so blindsided by, you know, all the other stuff, you know, the self-esteem and, you know, self-worth and all those other things. But now I can say, yes, I am a bridge builder.
And how did you discover that? And when did you discover that? And why? Like, what does it take to listen and discover that?
Well, I guess, you know, like I said at the beginning, I've had so many great moments of reflection, and I've been forced, you know, like all of us were during this pandemic. Like, I feel like I've had many dark nights of the soul, because the industry's hard. It's very difficult being the only one, you know, even though there's lots of us Indigenous community members doing this work, I'm almost always the only one in the room. I'm always the only one at the table, and I'm exhausted most of the time. And I feel like I'm never getting paid for the educational work and the consulting work and all the research and all the extra work. So when you get to a point, and then you have kids and then all of these things, and you get to the end of your potential and you just think, I'm done. And then you go into the dark night of the soul, where you have to reflect on your life and think about, like, what is my purpose here? You know, whatever your spiritual belief is or your religious belief, you connect to your source to like take a deep dive into like, what is the reason you're here? And I've done that a few times, I think. So I don't know when the first time was, but many of those times have had to do with my experiences in this business for some reason.
Mhm.
Thank you.
You have another big picture question for everyone, or
Is it
like I wanna
forbidden?
hear Jackie
Sorry?
and Nicole respond to it. Go ahead.
Well, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, my question was, is it forbidden to ask you that same question, Sarah? Because I would like to know the answer for you as well at some point in this convo.
No.
Look at your eyes.
Let me think about it. I haven't thought about
Okay.
it.
All right, well, Jackie was going to say something in the meantime.
But
Well,
yeah, I'd love to hear Jackie.
Starting off in my early teens, I started singing, and it was all about passion. And I truly, really thought that my world was going to revolve around R&B music and Motown. Music was the passion. I come from a family where my father was such a music enthusiast, and he was a bass singer in a quartet when he was in the States. And so all of us, the seven kids, we all have our record collections and stuff. And it's still such a big part of our family to get together in a round circle whenever we have something together and sing all our favorite tunes together. So you start with that passion, and then when that passion happens, that you're actually able to get through that awkwardness of being exposed on stage, and getting comfortable with your passion before that set is over. So you strive to do that and feel the joy, and it wasn't thinking about any purpose other than feeling that passion. And then, like I said before, there's all these people that came my way and said, Jackie, why don't you try this? Why don't you try that? We're in Canada, and the music business, it changes direction a lot. So you can't really make a living singing one thing or doing one thing. So these angels came to me and they said, Jackie, why don't you try the acting? Why don't you try doing radio or this kind of thing? And never, ever, ever came into my mind. And so then it gets to be where you start thinking about, oh my gosh, what am I getting out of this? It started with, my love of music. And then, it started with, it went on to doing some acting, and then actually sitting with a group of people and being introspective, and also in being introspective, learning how to see everybody else, to grow that way. And all of a sudden you've got this community thing. And not only do you want to, you see the wealth in the arts, going out to your friends, your extended friends, your family who aren't in the arts, that it's a new way of you find other ways to look at them, to deal with them, to help them if they have trouble getting something out. You're able to communicate, sometimes relate to somebody if you've been through that experience, and feeling freer to do it rather than staying caved in yourself. And so the wealth of that has been just wonderful. I thought, man, oh man. I think all of us should be able to go and feel good about going to a psychiatrist, just to have somebody that you can sit and talk to and say anything, that where there's not a personal connection, but within and my train of thought just went, but the power of acting and getting to know more about life, getting to know more about yourself, you start to think that you see yourself different, you see other people different, and it's ongoing and never stopping, and it is it turns out to be the passion that you want to connect more, that you want, however it is. If you're doing a concert, you want to get to know the audience as much as you want them to get to know you. It's all this give and take that's been such a bonus, and you want to try and share and bring other people with that, so that we can have conversations and understanding and share each other's passions, because somebody's always pulling your coat about something new, and wow, it really is exciting, when that happens. So just want that to just keep going, and then you have those points and those people in life throughout the years, and everybody teaches you something new, and I just love it.
One of the things, Jackie, that I'm kind of fascinated by you and the way you work, having seen you work, is you come with this complete openness and this agility to sort of go in one direction or another, but you have the same amount of conviction no matter which way you go. So it's like, I've never seen someone be able to be that open and receptive to others and maintain conviction. It feels to me like those things can often be at odds with each other. For sure, for me, like I have to be somewhat kind of controlling of what I'm doing in order to like maintain my conviction. But I'd never seen that combination in an artist so thoroughly. I see it in your singing, but I also see it in your acting. And I'm so curious, what in your life led you to have that flexibility or that openness without losing confidence?
Well, it was the journey in trying to find confidence. All of that was trying to find confidence, because nervous is like you get nervous when you're going on. I still get nervous when I go on stage, but it's a whole other thing. That when I started, it was a terrifying experience. So this stubborn Richardson says, I'm going to try and deal with that and overcome that, and that's been a part of the life journey. But so I just wanted to speak to something that you said, and about being open, and the beauty I mean, having to do Hey Lady with you, the beauty of that, going in there and you have a person like you who is always in the moment, Sarah. It's such a blessing. And I can't begin to tell you just how it's like, just, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't feel like I am at all, but I keep looking at you and saying she's in the moment. I've got to figure out.
But you are, and then taking that as the director, however involved you are with the project, it's like it just you just open. I know for me, you just open me up. You open me up more, like, and that's coming from you making us all feel so comfortable in the moment.
Thank you.
And I love that about you.
Thank you. Nicole, did you answer this question about the mission?
Oh, no, I guess I didn't. I still want you to answer after.
Oh my God, I have to think about it.
I feel like, yeah, I had to think about my mission this summer because I'm writing something right now that was hard and scary, and I had a bit of a panic attack. And I called my friend and she was like, you know what? Only some people are going to see it, not every, and she kind of tried to minimize it. She was like, it's just a show. Not every show is perfect. Just write the thing. It's going to be fine. It doesn't have to be perfect. You just have to write it. And I was like, that's not making me feel better. And then I was like, okay, why am I doing this? And I was like, I think my mission is that I want to try to bring justice to the world. And that seems like a very lofty goal that would make you be daunted from the task at hand. But that made me feel able to do the task at hand, because if my mission is to bring justice to the world, then it's not really about me anymore, or my, ability to find graceful words or whatever, like it's, or write, shape a plot that keeps moving. My ability is like, okay, do I see what is unjust? Can I use my tool of words to explain it? Do that. And it's like, you don't have to do it perfectly, but you have to do it. So I feel like when I identified that, it felt like, okay, if you're trying to just increase the amount of justice in the world with everything you do, that's a very clear motivation that has nothing to do with me in particular, which makes it like, what allows me to depersonalize it for myself. So other people's opinions don't bother me as much. Because I think for a while, some of my career aspirations were very superficial, and I was very much at the mercy of other people's judgments of whether they thought I was a good actor, or whether they thought I was attractive, or whether they wanted to work with me. Like I was very much like, their opinions of me really mattered a lot, because all of my career aspirations were dependent on somebody else fulfilling them for me. Like someone had to pick me for something. And I feel like now that doesn't matter anymore. Like I don't feel like I'm hoping for other people to pick me all the time. I feel like I'm doing something that I think is important, and like the people for whom it resonates, it will resonate with them. And that said, like, it's really hard to keep remembering, because I think I spent a lot of my life being like, well, I'm going to prove I'm smart, and to pull myself out of that, like get that ego out of the way, where it's like, it's not about trying to be the smartest one. It's not about trying to be right in this, this like issue. It's about, is what you're doing helping bring more justice? Can you bring that person on board? Can you help that person learn something? If you have, it's just like in an acting scene, if you have a clear objective and it's the right objective for the scene will work. So for me, like, changing it from like, I want my career to take me in these places, or I want to book this kind of part, taking those off the table and being like, I want to put more justice into the world, it like a lot of things became clear. And honestly, like that as a mission, I think it's been percolating. If you like, as Jen said, if you think back to things that you did when you were younger, like I was the class rep in my class, blah, blah, blah. Like I did things that were like that. I wrote a letter to keep a friend from getting kicked out of theater school because I didn't think he deserved it. I always did those things, but they were sidebars to this like superficial idea of a career that I thought I wanted to have. And now I feel like this is the main deal. And it's really quite freeing, because it's not really about me or me being likable anymore. And that feels really, it's new. So I'm still getting used to it, but it feels good. It feels like it's like, this can go somewhere.
Yeah. Amazing.
What is this thing? I've never seen this before.
It's like a plot.
It's ASL applies.
I'm like, I felt like, oh, like I'm like, okay.
I feel like you can't quite get away with it, Rad.
It's my bring it on face.
I
like it. Sarah, I want to know from you, like, what's your mission? Do you feel comfortable? I don't want to really put you on the spot, but I really want to know.
I don't know, except like when my initial gut instinct when thinking about it, which I haven't thought about it for myself for this thing, I did get advanced wording of this question from myself. But my first instinct is to just say this, like, I feel like conversations like this. So whether it's getting to have them in life so I can just learn more, or if it's facilitating through these inspiring conversations like this through work I make. I think creating or inspiring or facilitating or requesting dialogue and sort of hearing and learning from other people speaking. I feel like I, have lived 42 years, and I'm just at the beginning of learning about a lot of really essential things that were hidden for me in this world. And so I feel like getting to ask those questions both in life and through work is what I'm most interested in. And I think it used to be kind of taking whatever trauma I'd experienced as a kid and as a young adult. And, I did have, quite a lot of hard stuff happen. I think it was about being able to process that into some kind of fuel and to connect with other people through that and to give other people space for what was unspoken for them. And I think it's changing now. I mean, I don't know if that means there's some healing in that. I mean, I think that's a worthwhile thing to do as well, but it feels like it's changing now. And I feel like I just don't ever want to do something that doesn't have something to say. And I'm very lucky to be in a position where I can choose that. Like, I think that we all have to make a living, and there's going to be moments in all of our lives where we do things that we don't necessarily love what it has to say. That's just, life. But I feel like at this moment, I feel lucky enough to make those decisions. And I just want to make them consciously and intelligently and not rely on my own experience to know best. So I just feel like it's just to learn more right now, to be honest with you. That would be my mission at the moment.
I feel like are we out of time? Because I feel like that's the note to end it on. Was there, unless somebody wants to add something? Go ahead, Joanne.
No, I was just wondering, were there questions that other people?
Are there any questions that people watching?
No, they're mesmerized by the group, and there's absolutely no questions coming through. I will, because I mean, until Theresa and the ACTRA people interrupt, I will ask one more question of you all.
A lot of gushing. No questions, but a lot of, this is phenomenal. This is amazing. Yeah.
I mean, the only other thing I would say is I'd love to hear if you guys have any questions for each other, because I just think it's such an interesting group of women and of people. And I feel like on my birthday, my gift to myself is to take a different group of women that I admire and put them in a room and watch them talk to each other. That's always my birthday gift to myself. And I didn't get to do it this year. So I guess I just want to say, does anyone have any questions for each other?
I have one question for all of us, really, and because I think some of us have very similar goals. And I wonder, how can we help each other? How do we help elevate each other and the conversations that we're trying to have? And how do we collectively bridge that with each other? Because this is really, really awesome. I love having this conversation with you all. But I'm like, okay, so what can we do with this? How can we push this into a larger space somehow? Not suggesting that we do that, but how can we do that? And what do we need and want from each other to help each other in our mission? I'm gonna let my cat out of the cage.
I feel like I'm asking that question and being asked that question a lot lately, which I think in itself is such an incredible thing that's happening, where we are recognizing, and possibly through the fact that so many people are connecting virtually with people they have never met in conversations like this, and feeling like there's something to this. There's something to this gathering, and it feels like we're moving mountains a bit in these conversations, like that something is changing. So I would say the thing is, whether it's us or other people who are inspired by this kind of conversation, to just keep having those conversations, whether it's on the phone or in person one day or virtually. I do feel like it's fuel to help the other stuff, like I personally am overwhelmed by my parent duties. I feel like, running a business and trying to also, get back in front of the camera and do auditions, like all that shit is just so freaking overwhelming. So when I have to take time out of my schedule, like many of you, to have a conversation like this with other intelligent, inspiring, like-minded people, I feel like it's necessary fuel for me to continue on my day and however long it takes until we do it again. So whether it's, I'm open to whatever you want to do, Joe. And thank you for the platform for this, because Sarah always has a way of making conversations, like raising the vibration of all conversations, because she doesn't do small talk or bullshit.
Okay, so we are sort of being told to wrap up. I will say that, but to all of you, to address these concerns, the one question that did come through is, as a final question, what would you ask your union to do to actualize what you're looking for here?
Great question.
Well, I know that in this past while I've sat in on the Toronto union meetings, and just have more meetings like that, and maybe it means, I think ACTRA's doing a real good job of that, keeping everybody abreast of what's been happening. So if we did certain subjects like this, and I don't know whether it works to have like small groups so that we can see each other on the screen and not have people, that we can't relate to, because sometimes with Zoom, that brings out more conversation, right? More participation. So if there were, small groups just centering on specific topics of how to support each other.
Thank you.
Parker wants to say hi, Sarah. That Parker's
Oh,
It's a really cute cat.
hi, Sarah.
oh.
All right, so Sarah, we're gonna wrap it up. Thank you all for taking part of this. Sarah, is there any final words, last words you want to say before we hand it back over to ACTRA?
I just want to thank ACTRA so much for being so first of all, for the award, which is deeply meaningful to me. There are a lot of incredible women in this union. So to be singled out, I'm very humbled by. Thank you. And also for having the flexibility and the imagination to go with this plan for this conversation. It really is, this feels like I will remember this for a very long time. And I've learned a ton. Thank you so much for making this happen, guys. And thank you to the panelists. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. I couldn't have.
Thank you.
I'm just going to reiterate, thank you to the panelists, and thank you, Sarah, for making this happen, because this is your legacy. So off to you, Theresa.
And thank you, Rad, for being here.
Just watching.
Well, let's just say our final thank yous to all of you. Sarah, I would expect nothing less but for you to throw it outside the box and create something new and inspiring. And I'm already seeing posts on social media. People are posting about it, saying how inspirational all of you women are and how special today was. And yes, we should do more of it, Jackie. We're listening. And we do try. So thank you to Eleanor again and the ACTRA National Women's Committee. Thank you to all the ACTRA Toronto for the technical support for doing this, to Emma and Carol and Tony behind the scenes for pulling this together, and to our National Council and Executive. You chose wisely, my fellow friends. Sarah, you are exceptional, and continue on, and you inspire us more than you know.
And
Thank you, all of you. It's been amazing.
Inspire me so much. Sorry, Keith, go ahead.
No worries. I just want to say thank you, Radheyan, for doing your job. You didn't get to say very much, but that's fine. It was a great conversation. What an amazing event. Thank you so much, Jennifer, Joe, Jackie, Nicole, and especially you, Sarah, for this brilliant idea.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us, everyone out there. Thanks.
Thank
Bye.
you. And check out the Buy Us box. Check out Both Sides now on YouTube. Buy Joanne's amazing book, All We Knew But Couldn't Say, and look up all of Jennifer's amazing work, The Shine Project, but also the hundreds of hours of innovative television that Jennifer Podemski has produced, please.
And Jackie's music.
And cheers to queers, people.